The desk survived its handover, so this week the team finally trusts it and 3 people start improving the same instruction at once. Priya writes hers in a chat window, Daniel writes his in a coding session, and the service carries a third copy in its own code. They are all writing the same sentence. Never promise a refund date. On Priya's and Daniel's surfaces, it holds. In the service, it's buried in the message text. Instead of the field, the API reads for rules, and the model promises a date. And the service is the copy that real customers actually hit. Freeze, because the difference isn't the model and it isn't the sentence, it's where the sentence was put. Here is how the exam asks it. A team prototypes a support assistant in the chat product, then ships those same instructions through the API, and the shipped version behaves differently. What best explains the change? The item parks in the corner, and by the end you'll know exactly which surface reads your words which way. Call it 5 more of your 53, and this is the single biggest skill statement on the whole exam, so it's worth your full attention. So here are the 3 surfaces the exam names, and each one has its own answer to a simple question. Where do your instructions actually live? Start with the chat product, the one everybody prototypes in because it's the one that hides the most. The chat product already has a system prompt, meaning a standing instruction the model reads before anything you type, and Anthropic wrote it, not you. Your sentence gets layered on top of that, which is why your prototype behaves so well, and it's also why that behavior doesn't transfer. The docs say it outright. Anthropic's prompt doesn't apply to the Claude API. Your prototype was standing on a floor the API doesn't have. Now the coding surface, and this is the fact people get wrong most often, so slow down here. The instruction file you write for a coding session isn't a system prompt. Its contents arrive as a user message, part of the conversation. It works and it works well, but it lands in the same channel as everything else, meaning the same stream of messages the model reads as conversation. So later messages sit at the same level as your file, and nothing in it outranks what comes after. That's a weaker promise than a standing instruction. And the API, which is where your service lives, instructions go in a field called system, and it sits next to your messages, not inside them. Here is the trap, and it's a good one. No message you send can carry the role system. If an exam option offers you a message whose role is system, it's describing an API that doesn't exist, and you can kill it on site. So the same sentence gets 3 different contracts, and the design skill is choosing your surface on purpose instead of inheriting one by accident. Prototype wherever you like. Just know that the thing you're shipping has to be reproved on the surface it will actually run on. That was design choice 1, where your words live. Design choice 2 keeps your desk out of the news. Which parts of a request are yours and which parts came from a stranger. Every request you build mixes both, your rules, your question, and then whatever a tool dragged in, a web page, a document, a ticket, a customer type. The documented rule is structural, not clever. Third-party content goes inside tool results, which are the blocks that carry whatever a tool returned. Never paste it into your system field, and never drop it into plain user text, because the model is trained to read tool results with suspicion and to read your fields as authority. And the rule runs backwards too, which is the half people miss. Do not put your own instructions inside a tool result, because that channel is the untrusted one, so your instruction may be ignored or flagged as an attack. If you need to say something after a tool runs, say it in the next turn in your own channel. There is a smaller version of the same idea inside a single prompt. Wrap each kind of content in its own label tag. That way, instructions, context, examples, and the actual input can't blur into each other. Boundaries are the whole lesson here, and the security episode later in this course is just this rule under attack. Design choice 3, and it's where the desk meets everything downstream. Prose is lovely for a human and useless to a dashboard. Priya's team wants the ticket category and the urgency in fields every time, not buried in a sentence that reads differently each run. The mechanism is structured output. You hand the model a schema, which is just a description of the shape you want, with named fields and their types. The response is then constrained to that shape. So what comes back is parsable by construction instead of parsable if you're lucky. Two things. The exam expects you to know about schemas. Not every schema feature is supported, and an unsupported one is rejected outright rather than quietly ignored. The exact list moves, so it lives in the cheat sheet. What travels is the instinct. A schema is a contract, and a contract you can't express is a design problem, not a prompt problem. The same design instinct covers the tools you hand the model, and here the docs are unusually blunt. An extremely detailed description of what a tool does, when to use it, and what its inputs mean is by far the biggest factor in whether the model uses it well. So when a stem shows you a tool being called at the wrong time, look at its description before you look at the model. Design choice 4. The quiet one. A working session isn't a fresh start, it's a thing that accumulates. On the working surfaces, unlike the raw API, the session is kept for you. It can be resumed later, it keeps growing, and all of it keeps arriving in front of the model, which gives you 3 deliberate moves, and the exam wants you to know they are deliberate. You can clear, which starts a genuinely fresh session. You can compact, which summarizes what happened so far and carries on from the summary. And you can inspect what's currently loaded, which is how you find out that half your working space is a tool result from an hour ago. The design habit is boring and it works. One session per task, cleared between tasks, compacted when a task genuinely runs long. Context engineering gets its own episode later. For now, the exam just wants the reflex, which is that session state is something you manage, not something that manages you. Last piece of the design picture, and it's the one that scales a team: plugins. A plugin is one installable bundle that can carry skills, hooks, subagents, and tool servers at once, so a team ships a way of working rather than a folder of instructions. You add a source first, a marketplace, then install individual plugins from it, and that ordering is the whole install model. And here is the part that belongs in a design review rather than a footnote. A plugin runs code with your privileges. So installing one is a trust decision about the author, exactly like adding a dependency to your service, and the exam treats it that way, which closes the design picture. Choose your surface, mark your boundaries, name the shape you want back, keep sessions clean, and treat what you install as code you now own. Back to the prototype question at full size, and now you're armed. Option 1. The API serves a different model than the chat product, so the behavior differs. Option 2. The chat product adds its own system prompt that doesn't apply to the API. Option 3. The default temperature differs between the two, so the output drifts. Option 4. The API needs those instructions sent as a message with the system role. Name the decision first. This is about what Claude sees and says. Because every option is a claim about what reached the model, there is no absolute word in this stem, so rule 2 is quiet and rule 1 does the work. Find the mechanism that actually differs between the two surfaces. The different model answer dies on rule 1. It's the generic upgrade explanation and it names nothing in the stem. Swapping models isn't what changed between a prototype and a shipped call, so it explains nothing. Temperature dies on the same rule, and that's the lesson. 2 options, 1 mistake, both reaching for a knob when the stem handed you a change of surface. And the system role option dies on the documented fact from earlier. Instructions travel in a top-level field, and no message you send can carry that role. Notice how it's written to sound like the fix. It uses the right word in the wrong place, which is exactly the shape a good distractor takes. What survives is the surface answer. The chat product was adding a system prompt you never wrote, and the docs say plainly that it doesn't apply to the API. That's the pattern for this whole skill. When behavior changes and the words did not ask which surface you move to, because each one hands your words to the model differently. Here is what the 3 habits taught you. 3 surfaces, 3 contracts, layered onto Anthropic's prompt, arriving as a user message, or sitting in a top-level field on an API with no such message role at all. Untrusted content goes only in tool results, and your own instructions never do, which is one boundary rule read in both directions. Name the shape you want back with the schema, describe your tools like you mean it, and keep sessions bounded on purpose. And the refund rule ships in the services system field where the API actually reads rules. The other two copies were only ever rehearsal. The counter moves to 21 of 53, and the third segment starts filling. Only what runs is still untouched. Tomorrow, the three of them work in the same repository with the same instructions and still get different behavior on every run.